everyone. This is Lindsay of One of My Stories, and I'm here with Anthony again, Black Cinephile. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So this is it. We're getting to the end here. The penultimate episode of 1899, which is titled "The Storm."
Yeah.
So yeah, how are you feeling as we're nearing the end of this project?
It feels very bittersweet because I try to block out my head that as of now, the show hasn't found a new home yet. And that when we watch the final episode, I know there's gonna be some big cliffhanger, and I'm gonna be a little sad because I'm like, I may not never know how this story continues. But it's a nice bittersweet moment that we're nearing the end here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually, towards the end of this, when we get to the ending, I do kind of have a theory I want to throw out about how maybe what would have happened. I know we have one more episode, so we could theoretically hold all of our theories till the end. But I just
Yeah.
had a thought about, so maybe we can have fun speculating on some theories at the end. But
This
what are
is
your
a
Sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go, because you might be asking the question I'm about to answer.
Okay. I was going to ask just your overall thoughts of this episode before we dive into the details. Is that what you were thinking
Yep,
I was going to ask? Okay.
that's exactly what I was about to get into. Yeah, this was a pretty sad episode. It was a pretty hard hitting one, especially like towards the second half
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Um, Terrific cinematography, terrific moments of cinematography. We had some great I don't want to say score drops, but some great drops in the music score in some scenes. But yeah, this was a pretty sad one.
It was. Now, I'm not sure if it was the most sad. I don't know. Like, if it would be between this one and The Calling, I guess, where all the people, just march to their death, basically.
I think because I was more emotionally attached to some of the people that lost their lives in this one than, a bunch of people walking off. I know that sounds bad. A bunch of people walking off the ship. You're like, oh, wow, that's sad. But people that you really like grew to know over the course of the show dying, that kind of hits you.
I would agree with that if it wasn't for Crester. I don't know.
Right,
His
right, right.
his death was very sad, and I had grown in a very short time. I knew him. I had grown attached to him, and also that I feel like his death really caused his family to spiral in a big way. So it's
Hmm.
almost like this lingering sadness that has lasted even past that episode for that family. But yeah, this was tragedy everywhere.
For sure.
And I had just I don't know, this weekend I went to see Titanic.
Oh, you did when the re-release?
Yeah, the 25th anniversary was in 3D. I'm not sure why they did it in 3D. It didn't really add anything, but it was pretty
That's what I.
amazing how many there was a lot of connections that I had thought were there, but seeing Titanic on the screen just confirmed that a lot of the feels, a lot of the scenery and the things that happen, that
Mm-hmm.
imagery, the showrunners have definitely captured in this show. Yeah. So, are you going to be watching Titanic or skipping on that one?
It depends on what my wife wants to do. I mean, we both like that movie. I don't know if that was it needed in 3D? Well, you just said it didn't really add anything.
It
I
was, well,
remember,
that was the only option. I didn't need to see it in 3D, but for whatever
right.
reason, all the screenings were in 3D. And this movie was not even originally shot in 3D. They
Um,
sort of converted it into 3D, but it was still after seeing Avatar, I had very much been wanting to see Titanic. So it was
mm,
amazing that they sort of made that happen almost like by command. And then there's so many things that connect to this show, but it was it was needed, and I found out a lot of film critics, some of the film critics and NC Film Critics are who are much younger than me. Like, I'm in my 40s now, but
Mm.
there are some in their 20s or 30s, people who never saw it on the big screen. At the time it came out, they were not of that age, or maybe they were
I
too
don't
young to see the movie.
I don't think I did either. I think my parents did, and then they bought it on the two video cassettes when it came
Mhm.
out, and I would play those babies all the time. I love that movie. Yeah, I don't know. It depends on what my wife wants to do. Because I remember I saw Judgment Day when it came back in theaters, another James Cameron hit. And I liked it, but I felt like I think that came back in 3D too. And I don't know if the 3D was really necessary. Don't quote me on that. I don't know if it came back in 3D, but I think like it was kind of overdoing something that kind of already was a classic.
Mhm. Yeah. So, this is interesting timing as we're watching
Hmm.
this episode, which has a lot of the same story beats to it, which we can talk about when we get there. But yeah, I was like, hey, it's Titanic, it's 1899. We're people are drowning, they're in water, they're telling each other to please go on with your life. Don't wait for me.
Right.
Um, so that it was just an interesting, you know, conglomeration of events right there. So, shall we get into the details now?
I am ready to get into the details.
Okay. So this episode opens with a passionate lovemaking scene between Daniel and Maura. Now, I was very curious when this came on. I didn't think this at the time, but as I was
Mhm.
preparing the recap, I remembered how you were discussing in the last episode when you realized that they were a couple, and
Mhm.
how they, all along Daniel seemed friend zoned,
Right, right,
that
right.
the chemistry wasn't there, even making you think that would be a possibility. So I was curious what you thought of seeing them together romantically. What did you think about their chemistry in this episode? Did that open your eyes in a different way, or did you still feel like, yeah, this is super awkward?
I still kind of not awkward. I just still kind of felt like, okay, this is for the plot. Like I don't see the type of chemistry between those two actors as I do with her and the actor that plays Captain Ike. Um, Now, I'm not going to say that's a fault of the actors, but I would just say, like, because I never saw them in this fashion up to this episode until this episode comes along, it did feel not awkward, but well, I guess awkward would be the right word. It felt a little out of place. Like, I liked it for giving us context into their past and stuff. And it was good to see them, have that moment of reconciliation and, that exchange of dialogue of, never forget. But yeah, it still felt a little jarring, I should say.
Mhm. Well, I think this relationship is one way you could describe it would be one-sided. We've known that Daniel is very caring about Mara, but this whole time she's treated him very loosely and been very standoffish. And
Yeah,
that continues. Even we see this memory, I guess it's a memory, maybe that's replayed over and over again. They seem both into each other in that memory, but even throughout this episode, I think there's on her part, there's a standoffishness that continues, in that she's not sure if she can trust him. So
yeah.
whereas with her and Ike, they kind of meet on equal footing. Both of them are very, like, kind of holding their cards close to the chest, and
Mhm.
as they get to know each other more, they grow in trust, and they're kind of doing that at the same level, which makes it, seem like a better or more interesting or more even relationship.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And plus, I understand where she's coming from. She's paranoid. She doesn't know if she could trust this guy, and even though she has little memory flashes in her mind, and we'll get to that great bombshell that came later that I just did not see coming. You know, it is hard for her to trust him. You know, it's like, because we've only seen one side of Maura. We've seen the Maura that's like, doesn't really remember much of what happened before this. So it is me being a little biased with the relationships and the chemistry I was already given before this bombshell dropped, but it's not me dismissing this plot twist either. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But their pillow talk is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It very much is set up sort of like pillow talk because they're having this. We see them making love and all that, and then they start talking about what is reality, and is reality neurons in the brain? Is it what happens inside the brain, or what happens outside the brain? And there's even that line where he's sort of repeating her words to her, and she says, "Oh, you actually listen to what I say?" And he's like, "Listen, yes. Agree, no," which seems very, very coupley kind of language to be having. And they're sort of seeing this issue from different sides and sort of playfully arguing about it. That stimuli are caused by a reality or a construct of one, and none of this would exist if not for the mind to experience it. And so they're just sort of having this argument about what is reality, and is it inside the brain or outside the brain?
I personally thought a lot of that was kind of like very dense. Like that was very dense pillow talk. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know a couple that speaks like that. Like during pillow talk. But of course I like the themes of what they were saying about reality. And one of the quotes I picked out was him saying, reality is what's happening on the outside, rather than the inside. But yeah, a lot of that exchange of dialogue was very dense, but it gives good background to what's going on with Maura and how Daniel fits into all of this.
Well, kind of, I don't know, it feels like two scientists version flirting. I mean,
maybe I don't
I'm
know.
not from that. I'm
Right,
not
I'm not from that world.
from that world, right? So, but I do enjoy robust intellectual conversation with an equal. So I don't know that I think it was necessarily too heavy. They were just well, in parts of it, tonally, the way that it comes across in the screen, not all of it is super playful. Like you get the sense, I don't know, you're almost wondering if Daniel has like motives, or if he's trying to implant something. And that's something she's very nervous about in general, is having anybody mess with her thoughts and mess with her mind. And so it almost does make you question his motives and who he is to her, and if he truly is as I don't know what the word, kind, in if he's truly as caring as he comes across, or if he is just another puppeteer that's trying to yank on her strings and
Right.
seems to know how to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But when they pan out, we see that they're in this giant bedroom, which doesn't look super cozy. It looks more like I think the walls were even, it looked like they were made of cinder block, and it was like a bed in the middle of a huge open space. So I don't know. What did you think about the bedroom?
It looked like one of those rooms where those people who I believe they work for NASA, but the people who have the telescopes who focus on like if there's any movement with the planets, it looked like one of those rooms. I was like, all right, so
Yeah.
I guess that's where their habitat is. Okay, it looked like one of those environments.
And then when she gets up from the bed, we obviously can see she's wearing a hospital gown, which is weird. It's the we
Yeah,
saw her in
that's a
this
weird nightgown.
we saw her in the vision when she's having her dream in the hospital. She's wearing this hospital gown, and she keeps wearing this gown throughout, and it's like, okay, if you're just getting up from a passionate lovemaking session and you're having pillow talk and now it's time to get a snack, why are you putting on a hospital gown? Yeah.
Yeah. That was an awkward look. That was an awkward location. That probably
Right.
made the whole sequence awkward.
And then once we get outside, well, before that happens,
Mm-hmm.
we find their quote, their special quote between them is "I love you, never forget," which is said over and
Mm-hmm.
over again. But when she gets up to, I guess we're assuming she's going down to some lovely kitchen, and then we get these vibration noises and air sirens, the same kind of air
Mm-hmm.
sirens that were on the ship. And there's a voice that says initiating shutdown, and that when we go outside, we realize, oh, this isn't really a bedroom. This isn't really a house. This is inside of Daniel's dream world. And his dream world is almost an alternative version of Maura's dream world, because we can see the hospital, but the colors are all washed out
Mm-hmm.
and it looks more futuristic. And the hospital gown is on the ground. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, all sorts of things are going on in this vision, or this opening scene. Um, so what did you think of this opening scene in general, besides their little pillow talk session?
Like I said, it felt a little jarring because I hadn't looked at them romantically up to this point. I low key thought he was her missing brother this whole
Mm-hmm.
time. So, I had to take out of my mind, okay, that's not her brother, that's her man. Outside of that, yeah, I thought it was a nice I thought it was pretty cool to see what's going on in Daniel's dreamscape. I feel like each episode you and I were looking forward to whose dream we were going to wake up in first, right? Or whose
Mm-hmm.
vision we were going to wake up in first. So it was a nice surprise to see we woke up with him.
Yeah, I was just surprised that his each of the dream worlds has been very different, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like different countries, different scenes, but the fact that Daniel's dream world is like a bedroom almost inside of Mara's dream, it
Yeah.
makes me wonder about Daniel's identity, and if he's um yeah, if he's, well, we can talk about that a little bit later, but just
Mm-hmm.
why does his vision look so similar to Mara's? Yeah,
Because they're connected. They're intertwined.
they're connected, but her and Ike are connected too, and I don't know. So,
She wasn't married
um,
to Ike.
no, she was not married to Ike. Okay, so then Daniel is told to wake up by Mara's voice, and he's in the room with the chair, the room
Mm-hmm.
where Mara sees herself being tranquilized or put under with this syringe. And he is banging on the door and asking Maura to please let him out. And he's telling her that the shutdown has started and that we don't have time and everyone will die again. And he needs his device. So, yes. Maura is not convinced, though, by this begging or any of his pleas. She's very
Mm-hmm.
much still in the zone that you're dangerous, you need to be locked up, and what did you do with my boyfriend, Ike?
Right, right, right.
Okay, so then we have the credits, the opening credits. And after the credits, we pull up, see the ship in the distance, we come closer, it's storming, and Maura is climbing up the ladder out of her vision and back into the ship, and she's in her bedroom, and she looks at her book, The Awakening by Kate Chopin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we had talked about The Awakening back in episode 1, just briefly. But just as a brief reminder of the plot of that book, it's about a woman named Edna who's a married socialite, and she starts an affair with this man named Robert. Robert realizes a relationship will never work between them, so he flees to Mexico. And Edna is longing for him and the freedom, both of them. She begins to isolate herself from society and withdraws from her duties. Her husband fears for her mental faculties. This is the part I didn't mention before, but her husband worries that she's going insane. But the doctor, or whoever, the family doctor, says, don't worry, just ignore it. She'll be fine. And she begins a different affair with another gentleman. And she ends up deciding ultimately to drown herself in the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, that's the end?
Yeah, that's how the story ends.
Oh, wow. I do remember us talking about the book. I didn't know it ended that grim.
Yeah. And the book is called The Awakening. So there's a theme out throughout the show, wake up. And for this character in this book, which is obviously supposed to represent Maura in some way or represent something she's thinking about, for this woman, waking up is drowning. That's how she wakes up. Yeah. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great contrast to Maura's story and what she's going through. I think it's a nice hat tip to a story like that in this show.
Yeah, I was thinking about if Daniel's her husband and the husband in this book is worried about his wife, he knows about all these affairs and just thinks, she's going crazy. And it also makes me think about her father and how her father built a hospital for her mother who was losing her memories. So yeah, there's several connections we could make from this book. It definitely does not persuade me to necessarily that I need to read this book. I guess I could read it sometime when I'm in a mood for something really tragic, but but yeah, it's definitely a totem of some kind in this book, because several times, like, Sebastian comes out, looks at the book, Maura comes out again, looks at the book. So yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe the awakening would have come up again in the episode, in the show, if we had more seasons.
For sure.
So we then go to the bridge and we have a scene of chaos. We have Tobe, Ivan, Anker, Ramiro, Virginia, and Ramiro. Yeah, they're all sort of arguing in their own language about what they should do next. And the steering wheel is just kind of spinning around. Yeah.
I had an opening to a joke I wrote down. I wouldn't know what the punchline is, but I was like, what do you get when you have a religious fanatic, a pregnant woman, and a frost priest all in one room? I don't know what the punchline would be, but I guess it will be whatever happens in this episode. Because I'm like, this is a great beginning to a joke.
Well, what gets me about this scene is that they're all sort of saying the same thing, but since they can't understand each other, they're all saying, let's go get the captain, or let's go find someone to help us. But
right.
Yeah, there's chaos. And then there's Virginia, who just keeps saying, we need to find the captain, so she agrees with that, but we also need to find Miss Franklin. And which is strange, because Maura is a doctor of the brain. So for some reason, Virginia seemed to think Maura can help her with her
right
with her weird with her black crystal disease, or whatever you want to call it.
Right. Whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's funny how at some point Tove is like saying, "Let's just stop talking and do something."
Mm-hmm.
Like let's stop talking and just do. And then that's when everybody just kind of splits up. And I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, the scene is pretty funny in general, even though it's like, oh, it's kind of scary too. There's this storm and everything's rolling around. Ivan, of course, says this is God's
Mm-hmm.
revenge. And
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and what was it? Ramiro, is it Ramiro who says the brute will know what to do?
Right.
They're
Right.
talking
Right.
about Franz, but they're just like they don't know his
Right.
name, so
Yeah.
they just say that brute will know what to do. And everybody goes except for Virginia. And she seems to be rooting around in the drawer looking for
Yeah.
something.
Don't worry about me. I'm fine, dear. I'm completely fine, is what she tells uh what's the French lady's name?
Clemens.
Clemens, what she tells Clemens.
Mm-hmm. And she's hiding her hand behind her back and
Right.
trying to keep herself from falling using only one hand. Yeah. Virginia's not looking good right now. It's not looking good for her. So
Yeah, absolutely.
so Daniel then starts this crazy exploration.
Mm-hmm.
He's locked in this room, but he says what if and begins
Mm-hmm.
an exploration through everybody's dream worlds, which was crazy. He
Yeah.
opens the panel on the ship's hull using a crowbar, and he enters this tunnel of wires.
When that scene happened, I thought of this joke that used to be on the internet saying the internet is full of wires.
I've
I
never heard
don't
this
know.
joke before.
Yeah, like the internet's full of wires, and I don't know. It used to be like a joke on the internet back in the day.
um One of my thoughts when I saw this, the power is not, the power was off when this all started, and he starts crawling through these wires, and I was just like, if he starts crawling around in there, is he gonna get electrocuted? Is he gonna
Right.
get hurt or something? But that didn't come to pass. But he enters this tunnel of wires. Sebastian is on a hunt for the boy, and um where he and Maura run into each other, and both of them are trying to keep their secrets while finding out what the other person knows. Again, where he's like, uh I thought, the captain was back on the ship. Back on the ship? Was he gone?
Mm-hmm.
But they're just, and he's like, did you find the boy? And they just kind of part ways. Here's where Mara finds Virginia in the bridge, and yeah, this was, I don't know, this was kind of sad. She was hoping Mara could tell her what it is, and she says, "I think I'm gonna die." Mara says, "You're not. Just think of it as a bad dream." I mean, what do you mean? Think of it as a bad dream, Mara? You know, this there's several instances in this episode where this kind of language happens,
Mm-hmm.
and Mara supposedly doesn't remember anything, but yet these things come out of her mouth. um but she ends up just leaving Virginia there by herself again, and Virginia's like, please don't leave me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of sad. Did you feel for Virginia?
Yeah, I felt like such an interesting character that I felt would have been more compelling towards the end where we are now. I was kind of a little disappointed. I think I wanted the show to do more with Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we have one more episode, but um, we of course want to know what's inside her letter. Later on she finds
Right,
her
right,
what's
yeah.
lost will be found, but we don't see what's in the letter.
Yeah.
And we don't as part of his exploration, Daniel ends up going into these different portals, which I'm thinking they correspond with people that we haven't seen. Like he comes to one and it's we hear church bells and there's a rosary on the ground and a well, and I figured that was Ramiro and Angel's world. Did you get that sense as well?
Um, no, not exactly. I mean, well, church bells. Uh, I don't know. I guess I didn't really like pay much attention to that world when we got there. I was like,
Mhm.
I think the one world that kind of gripped me was the world that Maura ended up in. That was Ike's than the other worlds.
Right. Um, so yeah, Moore ends up going into Ike's dream, but I was thinking about Daniel as he's traveling through these different
Right, right.
places
Yeah, no.
on
Yeah, I
his
know.
way. And at first I was like, well, where is he? Because he comes out,
Hmm.
you don't get to see much, but he comes out in this world, and I was thinking how Ramiro has stolen the clothes of a priest, right? So he's
Hmm.
wearing a priest's
Yeah.
clothes. So it kind of, perhaps in this world, this is where Ramiro killed the priest, because the rosary's on the ground
Hmm.
and there's a well somehow and there's a church. So they're near a church. Then later, Daniel uses that well to go into another vision, another place, and then he goes in, comes out and it's snowy, and
Hmm.
there's blood, like blood on the ground leading to this hut, and on the ground there we see the picture that Olek has been carrying around.
Hmm.
So I figured that was Poland,
Hmm.
right? Um, but I guess what I'm saying is none of these memories we have explored, which those were just stop offs. We didn't see much, but I'm kind of like, oh, I want to know what happened there now. I want to know what
Yeah, I
happened
know what you're
there.
saying. Yeah,
But
yeah. Like,
yeah, but we don't, as far as I know, we haven't entered any scenes that are about Virginia. So yeah.
mhm,
Will we get to see what happened, what Virginia's up against? Because her character is still very much a mystery.
for sure.
Um, so Sebastian, he gets to this sick bay in the ship, and he's using this handheld device to try to figure out where the boy is, but he's not able to do that at first.
I thought that was a pretty cool device.
Yeah, it looked
Like,
like what? It looked like a Game Boy.
it looked like a Game Boy, but it also the reason I say it's cool is because up until this point we just been dealing with this one thing with this Connect Four thing that
Mhm.
transports people to other dimensions and stuff. I'm like, I don't know how to decipher something like this. This whole time we've been seeing things put in code with upside triangles, downside triangles. Now I got something I was like, oh, that actually looks pretty cool.
Mhm. Yeah,
It
he
yeah,
he can use it to locate people. It's been there all the time, but you're kind of wondering, well, why hasn't anybody used this up until then? Um,
it's the one thing in here that looks like advanced technology uh
mhm.
within that world. It kind of reminded me of that machine that in the Dark Knight Batman would use, going through using each person's cell phone to try to figure out where the Joker was. It kind of reminded me of that technology. If you remember that film.
Yeah, but you're right, because some of the technology has been more steampunky so far, with
Hmm.
the little, you call it connect four device. That's kind of funny. But the red
Yeah.
button and the triangles and the buttons and stuff. Um so Maura then goes into Ike's memory and finds, it runs into his wife. So this was the part you were talking about.
Maura ends up in his dreamscape, in Ike's dreamscape, and his wife comes in and says, "Hi, may I help you?" And Maura is I think she tries to like ask, where's Ike, or like, she doesn't really know how to react. And the lady kind of malfunctions like a robot, kind of repeating the same dialogue over and over again, gripping Maura's arm. I thought it was interesting in that it shows that dreamscapes can malfunction, and it kind of showed it from like a robot perspective. It kind of reminded me of Westworld a little bit too. I thought it was a nice, creepy scene.
Hmm. Yeah, before the wife comes downstairs, Mara sees the picture of Ike and his family,
Mm-hmm.
and, she probably has thoughts about that when she sees it because she's got that low key or high key crush on Ike. She's like, "Oh yeah,
Right.
he has a family." And then yeah, the wife starts to malfunction, and she was saying not just, "Are you lost? May I help you?" But she says, "Are you well?" Which it struck me that, knowing that Mara's dream world is like a hospital, and there's this, theme of wellness and
Mm-hmm.
brain. So it's like, was this the wife is acting almost like a nurse bot specifically? Like, "Do I need to take your temperature? Are you well?" Um, but yeah, so Mara gets this feeling that she's in the wrong place, I guess is
Mm-hmm.
the overall feeling. But yeah,
Right.
it was super creepy, and you wondered what the lady was gonna do to Mara there for a little bit. Um, when Daniel's doing all this, he's trying to find a shortcut basically to get out of being locked in. We do see several
Mm-hmm.
times that it'll pull back from the screens, and we have Henry's watching everything, just relishing every single second of seeing these people try to get out of his maze, which is creepy. And he's been watching Daniel, which we already talked about those scenes, but he then is watching the group making their way down to the coal room.
I love the shot composition of that too, because when we see Virginia on one screen, and we transition to another screen of the passengers going towards the coal room. It's like
Hmm.
we're zooming into the grainy screen, and then the shot composition tunes into where it morphs into where they are. Like the cinematography changes. I like the transition of it.
Hmm. And it's all sort of meta because he's watching
Yeah,
it and we're watching it at the same time.
yeah, that too.
But this is one of the Titanic-y scenes here where the people come to this hallway,
Mm-hmm.
and Ramiro starts handing out the life jackets, and Anker is like, "This is useless because in this water we will not drown. We will freeze."
Yeah.
Um and Tove says, "We need to continue," and everybody keeps going except for Ivan, who decides this is where she's going to lay down her anchor right here in this hallway.
Pun
Um,
intended.
what did you say?
I said pun intended.
Yeah, well,
Lay down, anchor. Yeah.
oh gosh. um, yeah, and yeah, she's like, "He's not a priest," and she's clearly a whore, referring to Clemens, which I guess because she was wearing pants, all of a sudden she's a whore.
Right. That's
Um,
just yeah.
yeah,
I been logic.
yeah. Um, this is God's choice. Tove tries to talk sense into her mother and says she thinks her mother is saying, "I'll wait here and God will save me." But Ivan's actually like, God's ready to drown us, and who am I to stop it from happening?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Tove says, God will not protect us. We have not been chosen to follow him. And this, referring to her belly, is not God's miracle child. Um, you're crazy. It's basically what she tells her
Mm-hmm.
mom, like, you're insane.
Very much. Yeah.
And she thinks dad and I are just gonna leave you here, is kind of what Tove thinks is gonna happen. But Ankur just says you should go on, and he's going to stay with his wife. Which I did not like. Because I don't know, in the last episode, got to see Ankur got some comfort and counseling from Ramiro. um,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not actual counseling, since they couldn't understand what each other said, but it felt like Ankur had a breakthrough moment in getting to be comforted by somebody who saw that he was in agony, who saw that he was in pain, and it felt like a moment of hope for Ankur. But his love for his wife is just surpassing of any concern he has for himself. So he's decided that if she's going to stay there, he's going to stay there with her as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was a sad scene because you could say this is one of those things where as an audience member you go, I, I'm getting my ass out of there. All right, listen, hey, you want to stay here and have false visions, that's on you. But until you're in love, love complicates things. And I know people go, oh, well, that's the cop out thing to say. But no, I mean, this man loves her. He's followed her this long. It made sense that he decides to stay. It was a sad scene, and it's not a scene that I liked either, but I understood it.
Hmm. Well, going back to Titanic, and I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
sharp your memory is about that movie, but a lot of the third class passengers in that movie don't even try. They're locked. There's a gate and they're
Right.
locked. They don't even try to get up there. But you see a mother who's just tucked her children in bed and she's reading them a story as they're all going to drown. And there's an old man like holding his wife on a bed. And it very much reminded me of those scenes. There were people that are on the deck of the Titanic and clawing to get onto a lifeboat, and there were others that just kind of gave up and just said, I'm just going to stay in bed and let what
Mm-hmm.
happens happens. Why fight it anymore? Why keep going?
Mm-hmm.
But for Ivan in particular, her whole mindset is that God is our judge. And what did she say to Virginia last episode? Something like, you don't make your own destiny. God's decided, chosen everything for you.
Right, right.
And in her eyes, she's just thinking, God has chosen that we will die. And so if that's God's choice, who am I to fight or try to get out of that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a scene that, like I said, I didn't like it, but I understood it. It made sense for the characters to make the decisions that they made,
Hmm.
and you just gotta be like, man, poor Tove. You know what I mean? Stuck with, a father that knows that his wife is, off the rails, but he can't leave her.
Yeah. Wait, I know you were gonna say that. I'm sorry, what you said wasn't funny, but I was thinking you were saying poor Tove, all she's got left is France.
Well, that too. All she got left is a brute.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, okay, so the rest of the group has made it to their destination. Clemens, Tove, and Ramiro get to the coal room. Clemens goes to hug Lucien. Jérôme is looking on.
Right.
Good old Jérôme. I mean, he's just like, all right, okay, you hugged him. I understand.
He's being a gentleman about it.
Yeah. And Ramiro and Angel embrace. And then Tove just tells Franz, there's no one steering the ship. So please help us. And the captain is nowhere to be found. And this is when, yeah, some decisions get made here that maybe spelled the ship's doom. If anybody would to steer the ship, it probably should have been Franz and have Olek close the bulkhead doors, because Olek is a ship worker, and Franz he's not the first mate, because the first mate is Sebastian, but he's pretty up there, so he should know how to steer the ship. But for some reason, he sends Olek up to steer the ship, and yeah, and then he is going to go close the bulk. He, being Franz, is going to close those bulkhead doors. And Ling Yi decides she'll stay with Olek. So yeah, it felt like bad management right then.
I wasn't bad with the. I mean, I didn't really feel that much about the assignment. I was like, all right, it was like I like Ling's connection to Olek. I like how she's kind of like very clingy to him. Like, look, wherever you go, I go. I felt like that spoke a lot to their characters and their chemistry. But this is a chaotic situation. I mean, did you really expect this to go well?
I don't know if I expected it to go well, but I guess I thought that Franz would be the one going up to steer the ship. I mean, if the plot dictates that is not going to happen and it's going to be a disaster, then yes, well, let's assign Ling to go up and steer the ship. But it doesn't make sense to, I guess Franz is thinking he's the only one strong enough to close the doors. I don't know. It just was curious to me that he sent Olek up there to do a job that he had probably been trained to do.
That's how I looked at it. Because if we had it reversed and Franz went up there and Olek went to close the doors, it wouldn't have ended well. I mean, obviously Franz is the bigger dude, and stereotypically he's the brute. So he's like, no, me go do strong things. me no go steer the ship. Like I'm being funny, but yeah.
So Maura then decides, everybody has a memory world. I wonder what's in Daniel's memory world. So she decides to go check out his room, finds her picture on the floor on top of the panel, and goes down into their bedroom. And she sees flashes and memories of them together and finds all the pictures that are on the side tables. Now, I was okay with this scene, but when I first saw it, I was like, oh, she's going down to the bedroom, she's gonna find the pictures, that's nice. But when I looked at it after watching it a couple times, I realized that there are an awful lot of pictures on that table. Like, who leaves that many pictures on a table? What I'm getting at is it felt almost like that they were props. Like, I'm leaving these here so that Maura can see them.
She can't overlook this.
Like, it's not just like Ike has a photo of his family on a desk. Daniel's got a collage board. I mean, yeah.
Right.
But these pictures, there's a ton of pictures. I didn't look closely enough, but now I'm wondering if they were they all the same picture actually, instead of different pictures. But it's her, Daniel, and the boy who is their son, which we kind of knew that already, but he's able to tell Maura that her son's name is Elliot. Um now
See,
Go ahead.
I didn't catch on to that. Maybe I was slow to realize that, but until that scene came up, it really struck me like, wait a minute, wait, that's her son. I didn't catch on to that part. I was still kind of wondering who the boy was
hmm But
up to that point.
in the last episode, didn't we find out that Daniel was Elliot's father?
We found out Daniel was her husband. I don't remember him
Right.
mentioning that he was the kid's father. They had some dialogue together, him and the boy. I don't know if that was last episode or the episode before, but they didn't have like Papa, like son type of like call outs like they did in this one.
Okay, you're right. I don't maybe you didn't call him dad until this episode, but you did see that because that's when Daniel was telling the boy, you need to stay here for a while so I can
Well, yeah,
take
yeah,
care of this. So you could tell that there was he was taking responsibility for the boy. You knew that, but maybe you didn't know it was his father.
yeah. I just didn't catch on to it at that point.
Mhm.
So when I saw this, I was like, "What? The kid? He's her kid?" You know, yeah, that was a jaw dropping moment to me.
Mhm. Now before while she's doing this, I accidentally skipped this part. Um Daniel, before he goes to talk to Maura, he actually goes to find the boy.
Mm-hmm.
The boy has a bedroom underneath the grave in Maura's world. So when the boy was told to hide, Maura and Ike were at the hospital looking for him, and we were all kind of wondering, where is the boy? Is he
Right, right,
okay?
right.
And he's hiding in this bedroom, which is underneath the grave with the cross.
Yeah, that's a great shrewd place to hide. That was a good place to hide.
hmm What did you think of his bedroom?
Um, I didn't think too much of it. I felt like you know, wasn't there like a drawing in there? Or wasn't there like some kind of drawing on the wall or something like that?
I didn't look what was on the wall, but the toys, he had blocks, colorful
Right, right.
blocks, and a colorful rug and some figurines. I don't
Yeah, I
know.
didn't um they looked more like collectibles than actual toys, which I thought was a little off-putting. But I figure like, kid stuck in a room by himself waiting for his parents to save the world. What am I going to do? Occupy myself with some toys.
Yeah, it didn't look like a very fun bedroom, I guess.
Right,
But you remember in the show Dark, they had that weird bedroom with the chair in it that they would strap the kids to, but it had like
right,
the
right.
colorful wallpaper. It very much reminded me of that room. Like not the kind of room you'd
That
actually
room,
want to hang out in.
that room looked more fun than that bedroom. That
Yeah.
bedroom looked actually dark.
But yeah, it was weird, and you could see the boy was just sitting there on the bed. He's not playing with any of these toys. So,
Right.
and this is where Elliot calls him dad. It's gonna take me a little
Mm-hmm.
minute to adjust to calling him Elliot. Um, but he says, "Where have you been?" And they hug, and it gets really emotional. And I couldn't help thinking about in the earlier episodes when we would see the boy and Elliot, sorry, and Daniel together,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't this way at all. I mean, I know they were probably trying to throw
They
us
weren't.
off about who these two were to each other, but you got the feeling almost
Right.
like Elliot was scared of Daniel and he acted really cold and like very disappointed in him. So as each episode has come, they've gotten more and more, I don't know, tender towards each other.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Yeah,
weird to adjust to that.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it's just for the show to like you said, for the show to purposely put you off course. But again, another jarring moment where, I was like, Daniel and Maura, they don't act like husband and wife. Daniel and Elliot, they don't act like father and son.
Hmm.
But I can see how that's kind of the show throwing this mustache, like, you didn't see this coming. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Or perhaps it just represents how, I don't know, dysfunctional a family can be when they're this smart. I don't know.
When they're trying to save the world. Yeah.
And Elliot has a very strange grandfather as well. So, um, yeah, he was almost treating him before Elliot was being treated more like an employee than a son.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, so Daniel or the boy, one of them mentions it's happening again. And have you found the code? Or mom, she still doesn't remember. We will get her out so she can end this loop once and for all. And you have to find the code. She has to remember where it is. And the boy is crying. So he's getting emotional at this point and feeling a sense of starting to feel a sense of hopelessness and realize it's not going to work out the way that he wanted. But Daniel is trying to make him feel better about that. And Elliot gives him the ring, which I guess is their wedding ring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this visually made me, it kind of made me laugh because, Daniel looks so much like Frodo Baggins.
It made me laugh. Like, I like not because of Lord of the Rings. That's funny. Yeah, just because it made me go. Don't forget to give mommy that ring that you always told me you got her. Like, son, remember I got your mother this ring. Give mommy the ring.
Yeah,
Yeah,
give
I
her
don't
the
know.
ring. Yeah.
Like, kind of, I don't know. I kind of had a Twin Peaks vision where
Oh,
when they had the ring. I
you're
don't know.
thinking about Twin Peaks. I'm thinking about Lord of the Rings.
Right.
But that actor looks so much like I can't remember his name
Elijah
now.
Wood.
Yeah, he looks so much like Elijah Wood.
I could see it. A young Elijah Wood. Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah. So that now Daniel is on the path. He's got his mission and he's going to leave Elliot back in his strange little toy
Back in this
basement.
hole. Yeah.
Sebastian is still looking and he's found him and he sends a message with the triangles and looks really happy that his mission has been accomplished. Olek and Lingy are on the bridge now and steering the ship, trying to do the best they can with their limited training they got from Franz.
Who reads a book, huh?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, nobody's looked at these books except for Ramiro and Anker. Daniel climbs up and so this is where Daniel then he's now going into his room from Maura's room and finds the panel open. And this is where he finds Maura. And he tells her about the son, that his name is Elliot. And Maura says, that's impossible. I can't have children. The doctor said I couldn't have children. And then we find out what we already kind of suspected, that she's not remembering everything correctly. That is a false memory that has been implanted, and Daniel tells her you wanted to forget and that you wanted to get rid of the pain. Now, one of the things that's not clarified is what is it she wanted to forget? Yeah. I was like, okay, did she want to forget something about the son? Yeah, is Elliot really her son, or is he a avatar for her son, or a genetic clone of her son they built
Mm-hmm.
inside? Yeah, so she wanted to forget some sort of pain, and so she told herself, rather than remember that she had a child, she chose to believe a memory or a thought that said that she can't have children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there's this talk of Plato's cave, the Plato's cave allegory. I'm sure you've probably heard that talked about in the past.
I have, and when it came up, I thought it was so interesting, especially when speaking to Maura, like listen, you're on the ship looking at shadows and everything while the real game is happening behind you, and the ship is just a distraction. Plato's cave theory, it's interesting because a hip hop album I really like called The Allegory by Royce the 5'9". He's a Detroit rapper. Um, that album, which is full of allegories, references the Plato cave theory heavy throughout its album. So when it first came up, that definitely made my eyebrows raise. Like, oh, I know that theory.
Mm-hmm. When did you first remember learning about Plato's cave? Was it in high school or college somewhere?
That album.
The album. Okay.
Yeah, the album introduced me to it, and then I did more digging on it.
Okay. Yeah, I heard about it in a song too, a musical, but it's interesting that um I heard about it in a Christian context, and people would be like, "Oh, when you're in the darkness of the cave, the darkness being sin,
Mm-hmm.
you're that the light outside, the light being Jesus, is too bright for you to see, and so you have to like take these painful steps to get there." And then later I would hear about Plato's cave in just simulation theory in general, and the
Hmm.
matrix, and what is reality. You're looking at what you think is reality, but the real reality is this other thing, and who's causing the shadows on the wall that you're looking at. So Daniel's trying to talk to her about this theory without being able to explain what he's really saying. So he's trying to, yeah, tell her about something, because he's withholding some information from her. Um, he says, if you would look over your shoulder, you would see who is causing those shadows. And you forgot what's real, and you have to remember to wake up. He can't do it for her. She has to do that herself. She has to see who's causing the shadows herself. He can't tell her the answer. Um, yeah. But he's trying to tell her this isn't real, and that he ends up saying it's a simulation. He just tells her flat out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
which I think you had already mentioned that as a possibility several times as we recap that this is
Yeah, I
a
mean,
simulation.
I more so referred to it as an experiment, but we were close.
Mm-hmm.
I think you mentioned something like that too. Like I mean, we were kind of close.
Yeah, I was thinking more a video game, but I guess in a way a
Yeah,
simulation is just a video game, right? That I mean, um
an
you're
experiment in video game format is a is a simulation. So we both
yeah.
had it on the money.
But he mentions that there will be, if you don't remember, there will be nothing to wake up for, and your consciousness will be trapped in here forever. Yeah. and they have a kissing scene. There's kissing here. And I mean, it was okay. I think their chemistry is all right, but there's still the fact that she doesn't trust him, and she's trying to. She feels like she should believe him now. You can tell, like, before she was like, "I don't trust you," but now she feels like, "Oh, I should trust him because it turns out he's my husband, and we share a child together." So it's kicking into her motherly instincts probably at this point. Anything you wanna say about any of that before we move on? I know it's kind of a big scene right here where Daniel and her have this conversation.
Yeah, it was just overall just a jaw dropping moment to me. I was just stuck on the fact that Elliot, I'm like, the kid has a name now, that
Mhm.
Elliot was her son. Like it was it was a jaw dropping moment for me for sure.
Yeah. Going back to that with Elliot, and especially the way that you were responding to him throughout this series, the annoyance of him not speaking, and it does make me wonder now, what was the deal with him not speaking? Like, why did he feel compelled to do that, or who told him you can't speak until this
I
moment?
mean, that compared with another thing I got a question about that hopefully will be answered in the next episode. But I feel like maybe Daniel told him like you can't let your mother know, like like that you're you. Like you gotta, like, mum's the word. Like you gotta be quiet around your mother. She can't have any idea of as to who you really are. So I feel like that's probably why he chose to do it like that. I wanted to say something about a line of dialogue that Daniel says to her.
Mhm.
Something about every simulation lasts 8 days.
Right.
And I thought about that. This whole season is 8 episodes. So I'm like, has it been a day each episode?
Hmm.
It can't have been, right? We had to skip a few days.
Yeah, I don't know. I never had the sense that each of these episodes is one day. Yeah, no. I mean, we do when we see Maura for the first time, um, at that point we don't know how many days she's been on the ship. She just wakes up and she's on the ship, so
Mm-hmm.
there could have been time before that, because she mentions also that her um that the Prometheus had been like on the water for 4 days or something before um like she was supposed to meet her brother, and it was 4 days ago, and then she got on to the Kerberos, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying we don't know how many days they were on the
Mm-hmm.
ship before we tuned into the show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happened dozens of times. Yeah, that part is coming up when they have that conversation. Um, but the storm continues. The ship is going in and out of the waves, and Virginia makes her way into the bedroom. This is when she opens her box and finds the letter. We don't see what's in the letter. And the man comes, we now see Henry. He's in his evil overlord bedroom, his like bond layer. I think of it that is his like super villain bond layer, where he has this weird yellow telephone on his desk, and there's all the
Mm-hmm.
reel to reels recording every single thing for whatever reason. And that, the man, I don't know what the man's name is, but he's like the messenger boy. He lays down another of these telegrams and lets him know
Mm-hmm.
that Sebastian has found the boy and he knows where he's hiding. Then Sebastian goes right to Maura's bedroom, and he goes down into the panel to get the boy. Daniel then tells Maura that she needs to remember a code, and that they're shutting down the simulation and there's a code and she needs to remember it, and that she hid it and made herself forget, and that it can be anything, a switch, a door, or a key. And she pulls out her locket, and wouldn't you know it, she's got a key inside the locket.
Right.
Which we never have seen her open it. She just holds it. But you find out that the key was mailed to her in her envelope. So, did she know the key was in there? I guess she did. If she remembers it was in an envelope. Yeah. And tells her, "You'll wake up this time, I promise." Which, don't make promises, Daniel, that you can't keep.
Right, right.
All right, so then Lucien starts to have a seizure as he's shoveling coal. And this is another sort of unfortunate moment that makes you kind of scratch your head. So Clemens is yelling that she needs the vials, and Jérôme says, "Where are they?" And they're in the bedroom. So they decide to carry him to the bedroom. Which is another weird decision, right? Because I don't know. I would have thought it'd be quicker to like go to the bedroom, one of them to run to the bedroom and get the vial and bring it back.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that too, because I'm like, just run and get it.
Unless they were afraid that, for some reason they thought it'd be quicker to carry him, which is bizarre. But they would have had to run there and run back. So, yeah, I don't know. They leave, and now it's just Ramiro and Angel shoveling coal, which probably isn't good. And this is where Daniel and Maura go to the sick bay, and they pull up the same darn machine that Sebastian has been dealing with. And he explains that there are shortcuts and cheats inside the simulation. And he tells her he's going to reprogram everything. He's that good. Once they flesh this out, the simulation will start again, and this room will go into the archive just like the others, but this time it will be different. I'll anchor us to it, so we will go through the same port. And every simulation lasts 8 days, and you are caught in a loop, simulation after simulation. So what this reprogram he tries was, I was trying to understand exactly what he was saying. Was the difference that they would go through the opening with the ship?
Yeah, I think that's what he meant. I think that's what he meant by reprogramming, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to go through with the ship. They would die before the ship goes through. I think that's what he was referring to.
Yeah. And they're going to go get Elliot, which Daniel thinks he's still in his grave bedroom. So then we go back to Ling and Olek steering, and this is when Ling hears her mother calling.
Right. See, I didn't know quite what that was. I don't know if that was like, I know her mom wasn't really there, but I don't know if that was the simulation manipulating her or if that was part of the reprogramming. I didn't quite understand that scene just to get her out on deck.
Mm-hmm. What I'm getting, or what I'm thinking is happening, is that Henry has set up this situation so that they are forced to fail. So he has to set up these barriers to success. If they had stayed at the wheel and
Mm-hmm.
steered the ship correctly,
I see what you're
then
saying.
that wouldn't have happened in that way. The same, yeah, the same way that with the bulkhead doors, when they go down there, there's no handle on the door.
Mm-hmm.
Um I'm not sure exactly what the big picture is. Um but if this simulation keeps happening over and over again, then the people on the ship are trying to accomplish this goal. Um and if they wouldn't, it kind of gets at my theory, but if they wouldn't let their emotions sway them, and that's what he says later, is that their emotions are getting in the way of them making good
Mm-hmm.
decisions. If Anker didn't stay with Ivan, then Anker would have gone on with the group, and they would have had either an extra hand to shovel coal or an extra person to help close the door. But as and Clemens and Jérôme make a dumb mistake by trying to carry the body, but because of their emotions, they're weak and they're not able to succeed. And so Ling is like, even though she goes after her mom and Olek goes after Ling, he's
Mm-hmm.
dumb too. So they're letting their emotions get in the way of what a rational person would do in the middle of a tragedy.
Okay, I got what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, I gotta say, it really hit me, the kind of death montage that came on after this scene.
Hmm. Well, I was not prepared for Olek to go overboard. I will say that.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
Because he's been like, I mean, along with Jérôme, Olek's probably like the most kind-hearted and loyal person on the ship, and
Mm-hmm.
has just been a all-around good guy. So he goes overboard. But when you say the montage, are you thinking about what are you thinking about, like Virginia and Clemens and Jérôme and all that afterwards?
Yeah, I'm definitely talking about that. The
Mm-hmm.
thing with Olek is, saving Ling, and then getting swept by the wave afterwards is very tragic. But yeah, I was talking about everything that happens after that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the one that kind of hit me the most was Angel and
Mm-hmm.
Ramiro holding on to him. Franz, I mean, Franz and Tove was pretty hard hitting, and Ivan and Anker, I kind of expected that to happen. But Lucien, I don't want to sound I don't want to sound cruel. Lucien kind of already gave himself a death sentence so many times that it was kind of like, all right, we're finally here now. Rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't a good nor a bad man, but he was a man. you know, but yeah, Ramiro, I mean, Angel kind of hit me the hardest. Like that whole scene was pretty sad.
It was sad, but yet for those two, I was thinking, he mentions that I never knew why you fell in love with me, because you're such a tender and kind man, and you're
Right.
right, you are better off without me. And I think we were all thinking, yes, you're right, Angel, you've been an absolute twat.
Right,
I don't
right.
know. That's what I was thinking. That might make me cold-hearted, but I was like, yes, Ramiro is way too good for you. I'm glad you recognize that on your deathbed.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's a comment that Henry makes, where he goes, they always make the same choices. Every simulation, they always hit the same downfall and make the same choices. And that's interesting to me because it shows that there's humanity there. Like they make the same choices, but they make the same choices because they're human. You can't really run a simulation where you make them inhuman. That's kind of how I took that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it was interesting how much I did feel for Franz because
Mm-hmm.
he sort of did the sacrificial thing, right? He said, "You go
Right.
on and I'm going to shut the doors." And you see him floating and it's kind of like, you done good, Franz. You done good,
Right.
pig.
Right. He
um
made up for the mutiny. Right.
yeah. And yeah, he says uh every time they make the same mistakes and every time they die because they can't get rid of their emotions, but that's what makes them weak. It's human nature's ultimate flaw. One shouldn't base a choice on love, anger, or hate. They're
Mm-hmm.
just silly feelings that cloud the mind. So obviously, Henry doesn't want to make any decisions based on emotion at all, ever.
Right.
And that's why he's just examines everybody like like they're specimens. But he's sort of eating it all up, which is really
Mm-hmm.
gross. And that's Elliot's grandfather, and he's teaching him or trying to teach him that this is these people are weak and I'm strong because I can get rid of my emotions, and I have.
Mm-hmm.
So when Daniel and Maura go back into Daniel's bedroom, they see the panel has been replaced that goes down into the dream world, and it has closed. It's now closed off, and they can't go down there anymore. I'm assuming Sebastian did this when he went to get Elliot. And Henry gets on the PA system and says, "You've come far this time. Using the Prometheus to gain access was a smart move," which refers to Daniel, how he entered the ship in the first place. So I guess that's a new thing he did, something he hadn't done before. At the end of episode 1,
Oh, yeah.
he gets on the Prometheus, and Henry congratulates him on using the Prometheus to regain access.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nevertheless, you failed again. Your little reprogramming won't help. Everyone on this ship will eventually die and take part in the next simulation.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting how he gave him, well done, but you're still gonna take this L.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He tells Maura he wants the key. If she will give him the key, then he will give her back her son. And yeah, and then Daniel is off. He gives her her ring, says, "I love you, never forget." And this is when Henry opens the pyramid and there's a keyhole inside. Um, and yeah, and then he says, "The Kerberos will be moved into the archive. Your mother will bring me the key, and this will finally come to an end." So I wondered if he's been after this key the whole time and he hasn't gotten it yet, or is it every simulation he needs the key to start it over again? Yeah, I had a question about that. Like, is is getting the key how he can start over the next simulation, or has he been after the key this whole time and they won't give it to him?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to figure out in the next episode. I kind of had a lot of things running through my mind, kind of what you said, but I don't know. Maybe the key opens up that huge triangle that's outside his window. Pyramid. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah, we still don't know what the point is of that big pyramid. So at this point, we have our crew of people,
Mm-hmm.
and the shutdown comes to an end. The countdown finishes, and the ship goes down into this giant rabbit hole
Mm-hmm.
and comes up out of another hole, whirlpool hole in the water. And we see Ike at the end of this episode. He is at his desk, day drinking again. He's back at the bottle. And his picture frame is empty, which I thought it was interesting that the picture frame is empty. I was like, okay, maybe it broke. But on the other hand, why is the picture frame now empty? He hears the rumbling, and the ship comes out in calm waters. And you have Ike on one ship, which is that one's the Prometheus, and then the Kerberos has Maura, Jérôme, Clemens, Virginia, Ling, Ramiro, and Tove are what's left of the crew. And Maura and Ike are just staring at each other longingly.
Right.
So what did you think of this ending? What were your thoughts as the episode closed?
My thoughts as the episode closed, before the ship goes through the opening, there was a beautiful shot, there was a beautiful cinematography shot where you have Ling on the deck looking up at the white light as the ship travels through it. I just thought that was a beautiful, beautiful moment. And, you know, as it's going through the waves, and the waves kind of like circling around the light, and it moves through into the kind of like the dead land of the other failed experiment ships. The final shot of like Ike and Maura looking at each other, I felt like that was a nice drop off point. You know, it's a nice drop off point to see where their relationship is heading now that she realizes she has a whole son and a husband that she forgot about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
there's that sort of hidden subtext.
mm-hmm. Like they're worlds apart now.
Yeah, they're sort of, staring at each other over this chasm. And it was, the shot you referred to where Ling is standing there and she goes through the portal, or whatever we want to call it, whirlpool. It's beautifully shot,
Mm-hmm.
but it was kind of like, I don't know, if I was Ling, I would be screaming. She was just like,
She was entranced.
yeah, entranced. But it would be scary, I think, to be in that situation and not be like, okay, where's the ship going?
Yeah.
So looking at who's left of this bunch, we've got, as I said before, we've got Maura, Jérôme, Clemens, Virginia, Ling, Ramiro, and Tove. And we have a lot of singles left, except for, Jérôme and Clemens, who aren't exactly a couple, but they sort of had chemistry. But it kind of makes you wonder with this group that's left, what is going to be the dynamic from this point on. Because everybody's lost the person they came with. Except for
Right.
Maura, she wasn't with anyone.
I don't know, but it's gonna be interesting to see. But I got a question. So, up until at this point, we're looking at Daniel as kind of a protagonist, right? He's on mostly the good side of history, where Maura's dad is evil, Daniel's side is like, okay, we need to stop the simulation, we need to reprogram, and we need to save my wife who holds the key to all of this. I'm just trying to understand why the little girl had to get killed at the beginning of this whole show. I'm like, what did he do to her? Like, like what, like did he? The show cut away from what happened. Like, did he kill the little girl? You know who I'm talking about, right? Where this whole thing started.
Right, Ada.
Yeah, like what happened? Because that still needs to be addressed.
Well, my assumption about that, I don't know of the reasons. I think her death is what causes the mutiny, so it sort of has to go down. But Daniel used that machine. Remember when he is in the coal room and he's trying to get the sirens to stop
Mm-hmm.
inside that panel in the coal room, and that man comes, thing number one or thing number two comes and is
Mm-hmm.
trying to stop him, and he ends up hitting him on the head with a shovel, and Daniel just kind of uses his little device to make
Right.
that guy, just take that guy out of commission, so he didn't really kill him, quote unquote. He just pushed a button. It's like almost like pushing a switch, and the guy just fell. And if you remember, he kind of just falls back. And, when we find Ada, she is in that position. So my assumption is that Daniel just used his handheld device to put Ada out of commission
Mm.
because he
Well,
needed to
that's
do
dark.
something. He needed to start the process of getting, that her death is what propels the mutiny to start.
Right. Okay. Hmm. Ah, okay.
You seem
It's it's
skeptical.
it's it, I mean, it still makes me side eye him a little bit. That's why I'm kind of
Well,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm not completely sold on Daniel being a good guy. Like, I believe he genuinely cares for Maura and wants, he wants to help her. He was going to take a bullet for her and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's definitely withholding information from her, and not in the way that Ike was withholding. Ike was withholding information because he was embarrassed and ashamed of what she might think of him, as opposed to Daniel. I feel like he's withholding information for the purposes of manipulating her to do the things he needs her to do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, especially this episode, Daniel obviously has a lot of power. You know, in some, I don't know if he has as much power as Henry, but
Mm-hmm.
he's um he's definitely got some, controls in this world. So there's that aspect. But as far as my kind of theory I wanted to talk about, it's not exactly a theory, but I was kind of thinking about how this season has gone so far, and we still have one more episode left. But we've gotten a chance through this season. We saw one cycle basically of the people going through maybe what would be a normal 8-day cycle, and how things always end up going down. Um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Ivan always stays, probably. Ling goes to talk, she sees her mom and does all this. So I was thinking it was supposed to be 3 seasons, and I was speculating that as the series had gone on, then um the characters would maybe get more insight, and at the end, perhaps we would see them go through the cycle and do everything correct and overcome the trap or whatever that Henry has
Mm-hmm.
set or whoever has set. And I was thinking how probably emotional that would be. Because if we had gotten to see them make the same mistakes over and over again, getting to see them do it right, would be really emotionally resonant. Um, if you're thinking as a comedic example, I was thinking about, the movie Groundhog Day. And
Yes.
yeah, you get to see him making all these mistakes with the woman, but towards the end, you see him having a really great day with her and becoming a great person. And because you've sat there with him through it, it's very emotionally powerful. And I was thinking of, yeah, if they went through the process of the drowning and we got to see each of the people be like, "No," like, "I'm not gonna stay and let you kill yourself. I'm gonna go on. I love you, but I'm gonna go," and, different characters maybe getting a chance to make the wise decision. Not that it should be devoid of emotions like Henry thinks, but,
Mm-hmm.
coming from a place of complete love, but yet knowing they have to do the right thing in that moment, which isn't always the easy thing. Sometimes doing the right thing can be the hardest thing in the world, but if it comes from a place of love. But if they are not living in their weaknesses, it would have been a really beautiful moment to see if we got to see them, like, survive this drowning together as a group and
Right.
not end up all dying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just excited to see what happens in the next one, to be honest.
Yeah.
I want to see where all this goes. I mean, obviously it was written in mind for more seasons to come, but I at least want to see what kind of conclusion we're gonna come to here.
Mhm. Yes, me too. So any final thoughts before we close out?
I thought it was a great sad episode. I feel like this is what a penultimate episode should feel like. You know what I mean? This was
Mhm.
had some surprises in it. I enjoyed it.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. It was a lot of stuff happened, a lot of acceleration towards the end, very sad scenes, and I was a little surprised that the storm ended so calmly. They're going through this whirlpool world and
Mm-hmm.
into upside down world and come out, and everybody just kinda like, "Hmm." I mean, they had to end it at some point, but yeah, it was just kind of strange that everybody's just seems really numb, like emotionally. They're just 'cause Maura's tearing up, but everybody
Mm-hmm.
else is just standing there like a little dazed, I guess, is what they're feeling.
Right, right, right.
But yeah, I am really curious. Henry says that the Daniel's reprogramming won't work, but I am curious if it did kind of work because they're still on the ship. They didn't die. So is that going to upset his plans? You know,
I think it will. I think it will.
yeah. And I am really sad that Ivan never got to see the boy alive. I was waiting for the moment when she would get to see him, and that didn't happen. So yeah.
I don't think that would have been a good thing for her to see him alive. That would have led to even more issues that nobody wants to deal with.
It's Satan. It's Satan himself.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe you're right. All right, so remind everybody where they can find you on your channels.
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Black Cinephile, all one word, without the C. Double feature verses. You can find us on YouTube and wherever podcasts are available. You can find my written reviews on 8bitwaffles.com. And I just wrote a spoiler-free review for Apple Plus, one of their newest films, Sharper, on Elements of Madness. if you want to check that out too. But yeah, that's me.
Great. Okay, so you're now contributing for Elements of Madness as well. Should I add that to your channel list?
Yeah, yeah. You could say I've done some guest contributions for them.
Excellent. Okay, and of course you can find me on at oneofmystories.com or on Twitter, Letterboxd, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, and One of My Stories. And guys, we're coming to the end of 1899. We will do episode 8 in just 1 week. So look for that coming up. And we'll see you guys next time on One of My Stories. Good night.
All right.